So this video is going to be for those of you who are wanting to get started in calisthenics or learn what calisthenics is. So for those who don't know, calisthenics is a form of bodyweight training. So it's using your body weight as resistance compared to weightlifting, in which you'll use dumbbells and barbells as resistance. So there's four main categories of calisthenics you can kind of go down. Those are weighted calisthenics, freestyle, statics, and endurance. They're all kind of intertwined, and you can very easily go between the four of them. But what I would heavily recommend before you go down any of those routes is to build up a really strong foundation. Doing so will allow you to avoid any potential injuries later down the line and any potential stagnating progress. So this video is going to go over multiple chapters. It's going to go over the warm-up, which you should never skip, the exercises, so it's going to go over your push, your pull, your core, and your leg exercises. The push and pull are going to be split up into vertical and horizontal movements. And then after that, I'll go over some general programming tips, how I would recommend you to program it, and how I would recommend you to implement progressive overload with certain reps and sets, as well as just general tips that I would have given myself if I was to begin calisthenics anew. So these are all things I've learned over my almost 2 years of calisthenics training, as well as becoming a certified personal trainer. And these are, as I said, things I would tell my younger self or anyone new starting out in calisthenics. So this video is going to be pretty information heavy. It's going to be pretty long. So I'll try to split it up into chapters. Just make sure you take your time with it. Rewatch any bits if needed to really let the information sink in, and hopefully you find some use out of this. So yeah, cheers. So if you want to make the most out of your training sessions, then you need to not skip the warm-up. A lot of the exercises we're going to be doing are compound exercises, and therefore they train multiple muscles and joints at once. This can therefore put a lot of stress on the body and the joints, especially some of the more smaller parts. I would recommend at least 10 to 15 minutes of dynamic stretches at the start before your working sets in order to properly warm up your body and prepare it for the workout that day. A good warm-up can really decrease your risk of injury and allow you to train for longer in the session for that day. Now, I would highly recommend investing in some resistance bands, as they can be used to help warm up and isolate and condition some of the smaller muscles. Now, the most important part of the warm-up and condition work, especially for calisthenics, is the wrists. I usually do these at the end of my general body warm-up before my working sets. Due to the wrists being quite small with little muscle and support, they really are not built to manage very high and heavy amounts of stress, especially at disadvantaged angles. So it is very important to warm them up and strengthen them over time, especially if you want to learn skills like the planche later on. Strengthening your wrists and the flexibility of your wrists is going to be very important, and that is what this training is going to do. Now, you may find it boring or goofy doing these before every workout, but it is really important, especially if you want to make actual progress long term. You will need to either use my warm-up routine here or develop your own. Trust me, as someone who neglected warming up in my early training, it did lead to me getting injured. I injured my wrist, and it did set me back in my progress, and it did take a while to heal from that. So in terms of just 10 to 15 minutes of warming up to not potentially get injured and have a smoother journey, it's definitely worth it. So starting with our pushing exercises, we'll start with the horizontal pushing, and for that we have the most basic movement in calisthenics, that being the push-up, where you will be pushing around 60 to 70% of your body weight using your chest, shoulders and triceps. With the basic push-up, you want to focus on your form, ensuring your glutes are down and your scapula is working properly. With the scapula, I would recommend retracting it as you go down and protracting the scapula as you rise. This will help with skills later down the line, like the planche. You also want to make sure your elbows are not flared out. They should be roughly at a 45-degree angle, and the movement should always be controlled with a slow eccentric of at least a few seconds, and then exploding back up. If you cannot do a push-up, I would recommend doing them on either your knees or doing them at an incline in order to take more of the load off and make the push-up easier. Once you do get stronger at the push-up, you can start increasing the difficulty by doing different variations, such as the diamond push-up with your hands closer together, which will focus more on your triceps, along with other variations like wider push-ups, which will give you more of a stretch in your chest, as well as unilateral work, which will also work one side of the body, and it will help you fix any muscle imbalances. You can also make every push-up variation and almost any exercise more difficult by elevating your feet. Now for your vertical pushing movement, you have dips. The dip can be performed on dip bars, and if you don't have any dip bars, you can simply use chairs. Similar to the push-up, we want to be focusing on our form, ensuring our shoulders are properly depressed so that they are pushed away from your ears. You should be aiming to lower yourself till your arms are bent at a 90-degree angle. You can go lower than this if you have good shoulder mobility, but be wary of going too low and injuring yourself. Same as the push-up, you should control the eccentric before exploding back up. This rule applies to most basic calisthenic exercises, so keep it in mind. The dip requires you to hold your whole body weight up, and so you should start with working on assisted dips on chairs or a bench in order to get the strength for a full body weight dip. When moving to the dip, start by focusing on being able to hold yourself in the position, then progress into doing negatives, and over time you should get strong enough to do the movement as a whole. So now we have covered the basic horizontal and downward vertical pushing movements. We need to train our overhead vertical pressing strength. For this we will be doing the pike push-up, which is a progression of the handstand push-up. You want to move your feet as close as you can to your wrists while keeping your legs straight, and keep in mind to keep your elbows tucked. If you're having trouble with this, you can start in the normal push-up progression and slowly move your feet forward over time. You can also do them elevated, which will alleviate some of the needed hamstring flexibility issues, but it will increase the load on the upper body, making the exercise harder. The closer your feet are, the harder it will be, and over time you can increase the difficulty by doing them on parallettes. So next up we have pull. So starting with our horizontal pulling exercises, we have the Australian row, which will primarily work your back, biceps and rear delts. This will help with skills like the front lever later down the line. These rows can be done on a low bar or a sturdy table,
and is essentially the opposite of a push-up, meaning the same rules about form apply. With the rows, you are going to want to retract your scapula by pulling your shoulders back to help with back activation. These will also help gain some strength towards our vertical exercise, those being pull-ups. To make this movement easier, you can do them with your legs partially extended. Again, elevating the feet will make the movement harder, along with doing variations like ring rows or unilateral work to also fix any imbalances you may have. The pull-up is one of the best exercises for mastering calisthenics and is a foundation of any pulling skill in calisthenics, especially ones like the muscle-up. To perform a pull-up, start from a dead hang with your hands pronated slightly wider than shoulder width apart, then pull up as explosively as possible. As you are pulling, make sure to retract your scapula and activate your core to prevent any swinging or at least minimize it. Once your chin clears the bar in a neutral head position, make sure to control the eccentric on the way down. Now we also have neutral grip pull-ups, which are going to be generally easier to perform, and supinated grip in the form of chin-ups, which will put a larger emphasis on the biceps. However, I would recommend you focus more on mastering the pronated grip, as it will have more carryover to every other skill in calisthenics. Now, if you cannot do a pull-up, you should start with just dead hanging from the bar. Then work on going from a dead hang to an active hang. From here, you can either use a resistance band and slowly use a weaker band over time. You can also try jumping negatives by jumping up to the top of the bar and slowly lowering yourself back down. Now at the start, you may not be able to lower yourself back down very slowly, but you will progressively slow it down over time. You can also do isometric holds at the top to help with the top half of the motion if that is what you struggle with. Once you have pull-ups down, you can start incorporating harder variations such as wider pull-ups or archer pull-ups. Again, these can help with any unilateral work needed. Next is how to train and condition your core. Now with calisthenics, you do not need to go overboard training your core, as almost all of the other calisthenic exercises are compound movements, and therefore will train your core indirectly as well. Due to this, I recommend training them at the end of your workout so that you do not fatigue your core prior to doing your main exercises. Regards to having visible abs and a six-pack, it is primarily based around your diet and your body fat percentage for them to show, while training your core can increase the size and cause them to show at higher body fat levels. Spamming 5-minute six-pack core workouts will not give you visible abs without also working on your diet. To ensure your core is strong enough for later skills, I would recommend training for the skill known as the L-sit. Starting with hanging knee raises, this will also help improve your grip strength for things like the pull-ups. Start with your knees tucked and then over time work to having your legs fully extended, with the end goal being an isometric hold as well as toe to bar raises. These can be done from either a pull-up bar or a dip bar. You should also train your abdominal compression, which can often be neglected. Abdominal compression is the act of just using your core alone to bring your legs up to your chest. The further back your fingers are, the easier it will be, so slowly lean forward over time to increase the difficulty. Hamstring flexibility also plays a component in this, and so working on your hamstring flexibility will also help towards this. You can do this either at the end of your sessions with static holds, or at the start with dynamic stretches for the hamstrings. Lastly, we have legs, which if you do a lot of walking or jumping can be harder to train with calisthenics, as your legs will already be accustomed to your body weight. So if normal bodyweight squats are too easy for you with calisthenics, we can incorporate different variations and unilateral work to combat this, such as the shrimp squat or pistol squat, ensuring you train both sides equally, starting with your weaker side and matching the reps on the stronger side, as to not develop any muscle imbalances. These will also help focus growth on the quads, balance and mobility. If you cannot do any of these, then you can use either a chair or a wall to assist in the movement, or stick to the bodyweight squats until you feel strong enough to progress onwards. For your hamstrings, you can do Nordic curls, which can be quite an intense exercise, so you should start by doing negatives. To start, anchor your feet down with something such as a bed or a couch. Once you are anchored, slowly lower your upper body down to the ground while keeping your core engaged with your back straight. You should be using your hamstrings to control the negative and try to lower as controlled as possible. Once you reach the bottom, catch yourself with your hands, then engage your hamstrings to curl back up with a push-up for assistance. Should you also want to strengthen and train your calves, you can do this with calf raises. Now you can train these with both legs at the same time for the easier variation. If this is too easy, you can go to doing one leg at a time. Just make sure you do the same reps on both calves, or you can elevate them to increase the difficulty. As a beginner, the bodyweight exercises will be great for building your leg strength and muscles, but as you progress and become stronger in your calisthenics journey, you may want to consider incorporating weight or barbell exercises into your leg routine, especially if your goal is to continue pushing your lower body strength. Now, there are definitely more exercises than I've listed, but these are what I personally did when starting out, or I would recommend myself to have done if I was to coach the younger version of me starting out. Now, in terms of workout splits, you can use, I would recommend 2 that will provide ample workout time and rest for a beginner to start with. So the first one I would recommend is a push-pull leg day split. For this split, I would recommend 5 workouts throughout the week. On screen, I have provided an example of how this could look, but you can also arrange this to fit your own schedule, as long as you're leaving yourself at least 1 to 2 days of rest between each section. This split is effective for allowing you to focus on one specific type of movement per working day, allowing you to push harder and have a shorter individual workout. If you have less time during the day, this can be quite beneficial. The next split is a full body split, which is for those who only want to train 2 to 3 days a week and can benefit complete beginners. This is due to the fact that complete beginners may need more rest time per week. It does, however, have some drawbacks, as this will have more volume in a single day, meaning you will not be able to push as hard for every exercise and your sessions will take longer. Now, I will also go over the different training styles you can do, as although strength and hypertrophy training do go hand in hand, you can train with a focus for one more so than the other. Before I go into them though, I want to explain what intensity and volume are. Intensity can be summarized as how difficult or heavy an exercise is, whereas volume is the amount of work you do, that being either your reps and sets. If your main goal is strength, you'll be training with a high intensity and less reps, around 1 to 5 reps, and longer rest time of around 3 to 5 minutes between sets. The other style of training is hypertrophy, which will mean your workouts will have more reps with higher volume and shorter rest times between sets. This means you will be doing between 8 to 12 reps with 1 to 3 minutes rest. Finally, we also have endurance training, which will also focus on a higher volume and shorter rest time, with the rep ranges being anywhere from 20 plus reps. This will work on the endurance of your muscles and their ability to perform for longer periods before getting tired, but is less effective for building strength and muscle. Now, what I would recommend as a complete beginner is to focus on the rep ranges of anywhere between 5 to 15 or 8 to 12 until you are comfortable with the basics and have the correct form. Then you can experiment more with other rep ranges with less chances of getting injured from them. In terms of structuring your routine, I personally always start my workouts with my dynamic stretches to warm up my body and joints. Then I will do a slight strength ramp up. This involves performing an easier variation of the exercises I will be doing that day. So if I'm training a pull day, I would start by doing dead hangs at the end of my warm-up. Next, I have my main working sets, in which I generally focus on compound exercises, making sure to keep it simple and not doing hundreds of different exercises a day. After my main working sets, I will do some conditioning and isolation work with either a band or without, and I'll focus generally on going a bit higher in reps. This can be used to focus on some of the smaller muscle groups, for example the biceps or the upper chest. Finally, I finish with some static stretches to help promote flexibility development and help with my rest and recovery. Now, when it comes to creating your own routine, you should be implementing exercises from all the different types of movements we went over earlier in this video. For example, if you are creating your push routine, you should be including exercises from both the horizontal and vertical movement category, both with your downward and upward vertical movements. This will help ensure the strength you gain is well rounded and help prevent any issues when training for skills later down the line. Here I have made a list of all the exercises we mentioned earlier in the video, as well as some extra ones which I've ordered in terms of increasing difficulty, so that you can easily plug them into the template I'm going to provide you or into your own templates and routines. Now, here is a template for a push-pull leg day split, which you can follow or use as guidance when creating your own routine. After properly stretching and warming up, you will start with a higher intensity exercise. Then you will go down to an easier progression to ensure you have ample amount of volume in your session. If the hardest variation you can do is already the earliest progression in the set of exercises, then focus on doing that exercise for 3 sets of 5 to 12 reps. In order to know what progression to use, you should start from the bottom for your less intense progression until you find one you can only perform for 8 to 12 reps. Then take the one above, which will be the harder progression. Then use that for your more intense progression. By completing the more challenging progression first, you ensure you give it the most amount of attention when your energy levels are at the highest, which will help you focus on building the strength towards the next harder progression. After that, you lower to a less intense progression with a higher rep range, followed by any accessory or isolation work if needed. For example, if you're struggling getting to the top of a pull-up, you could work on isometric holds at the top after your main working sets. Or if you're wanting to focus on your biceps for that session, you could throw in some banded bicep curls. As for the rest times, you will still want to aim for around 3 to 5 minutes for your more challenging sets. as these will require more energy to complete and require more time for your muscles to recover between sets. For the less intense sets, resting for around 1 to 3 minutes should be enough. However, if you genuinely cannot complete a quality set with good form, it is okay to rest an extra minute or two longer if needed. Just try not to be resting more than 5 minutes in total. Also, when choosing your higher intensity exercise, you should ensure it is one you can still do with relatively good form, as we're not looking to injure ourselves by performing exercise progressions that are too hard for us at the moment. As you get stronger, it is important to implement progressive overload and make your workouts harder in order to keep progressing and keep growing stronger and building more muscle over time. With weightlifting, you can do this simply by just adding more weight to the exercises, but with calisthenics, this is done through more difficult progressions and higher reps. A general rule of thumb is once you reach the end of a rep range, you increase the progression of the exercise to a harder one. For example, with the beginner template shown here, when you're able to do 3 sets of 12 of the less intense progression, you would swap that out for the next harder progression, and swap your more intense progression for the one above that. For example, if my intense progression is push-ups, and my less intense one is knee push-ups, I would swap the push-ups to my less intense one, and use the progression above that for my now new intense progression. Finally, in regards to rest, it is important to remember that actual strength gains and muscle mass are made in between your sessions during the resting and recovering phase, with the correct amount of sleep and nutrition provided. You can train while sore, but the chances of injury are much higher, and you could be interrupting your own body's natural recovery, and therefore interrupting your body building back stronger. So it is always better to recover properly between your sessions. While this video is just about calisthenics, improving habits in the rest of your life like sleep, nutrition, discipline, as well as others, will help improve your progress in calisthenics as a whole, and will only improve your mental and physical health along the way. On a side note, I would also recommend you record yourself when working out. This allows you to see yourself from another angle and ensure you are using the correct form and see any areas of potential improvement. It also allows you to look back and see how far you've come. As you progress in calisthenics and look to start learning the skills, it is important to have a strong foundation level of strength and form in the basic exercises. While there is no set number of reps that will automatically qualify you for skill training, as a general guideline, a good goal to have before starting skill training would be able to comfortably perform at least 25 plus push-ups, 12 plus pull-ups, and 15 plus dips. This will help ensure that you perform skills safely and with the proper form, and will also set you up for success as you move towards more of the advanced skills. In the future, I will make some more videos on where to go from here once you've reached this set recommended guideline, and how to start learning and mastering some of the skills after this point. So stay tuned for those and let me know in the comments any particular ones you would want to see. So as I said, I am a personal trainer, so I offer a program which is a complete guide to calisthenics training. This is suitable for both beginners and will take you to intermediate levels. This will cover bodyweight training, weighted calisthenic training, as well as the mixture of the two. This will cover how to program them, the reps, the sets, everything like that will be included in the program. If you're interested in the program, you can find it in the link below. I also offer online coaching If you're interested in that, you can find that on my Instagram by simply messaging me.
So that pretty much sums it all up. I've tried to include everything I can, everything I've learned over the last almost 2 years of calisthenics training, along with becoming a certified personal trainer, as well as just things that I wish I would have known while I was starting out, to try and help you the best I can. So I hope you found value in this video. I hope it's inspired you and given you the teaching points to get started in calisthenics. Just know that calisthenics can be a bit of a stressful journey at times. It can take a while, and sometimes it's hard to see progress day by day, but just know that if you stick with it, stay disciplined, and just don't give up, you will succeed. And in a few years, you'll look back to this moment where you were watching this video, starting your calisthenics journey, and you'll be proud of how far you've gone. So don't give up. Peace.